Okay, so I first want to go ahead and welcome you to, let me just do this here. We're good. Um, Adrenal burnout in midlife women. That's kind of extreme of adrenal burnout, but that's what I'm seeing a lot of. And that's the words that people are using with me. And why stress hits differently after 40, and some herbs and other things that help rebuild resilience. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I'm going to just talk and offer some insight for about 25, 30 minutes. If you have any questions or something comes up while we're talking, please put them in the chat box or jot them down and we'll go through them at the end. I am not looking at the chat because I'm like a squirrel and it will be distracting to me. And I want to stay really focused. So we'll get to those at the end. And if by chance we've run out of time, um, I will respond by email and send those to you. And also, if you're interested in getting a recording of this, I'm going to ask you to just put your email into the chat so that I can send it to you, because I did not set that up on the front end, I realized. And so it's the only way I'll have to get the information to you. So not required, just suggestion. Okay. So I want to say that what if you're feeling more stressed or you're feeling more ungrounded, that you're not imagining it, and stress does feel differently after 40, and your fuse um, may feel like it's a little shorter, and everything might just feel like it's more. And these are things that I hear from my clients all the time. And so that's kind of why I wanted to start right here and tell you that you're not crazy, that you're not imagining things. And my goal is to help you understand what's happening in your body so that you can walk away with maybe a couple things to implement, to make life a little easier for yourself, or just to really understand what's happening, because that's my goal, to help you make more sense of what's going on. And the truth is, you're not just suddenly bad at dealing with stress. Your body has changed. And nobody gave you the new instruction book for, what it looks like now. Or I should say, most women have not been told what to expect. It's not something that doctors, you know, know about, I have come to realize, and they just don't talk about it. So what you may be experiencing is a very normal experience and a normal phase, but that doesn't mean that you have to suffer or, you know, march through it without any information. So I want to kind of reframe it, that you're not doing anything wrong, that your body has changed, and that we need to understand the new rules that our body's playing by so that we can adapt and give it what it needs to thrive. Okay. And so, why am I doing this? Why am I focusing on midlife women? Well, underneath it all, I consider myself an educator. And I really want to help women understand their bodies and what's happening so they can make more grounded decisions about their health. There is so much information out there right now, and a lot of it is trying to sell you something, a program, a product. We're being marketed to right now like never before. There's a ton out on social media. And if you really understand what's happening and what you can do to help you, you'll know kind of how to navigate that pathway, and you'll be more confident about making decisions about your body. And I'd like to help connect the dots that are happening here. And as I said, walk away with something that might be really helpful. So this is really coming from a place of wanting you to feel more informed, more prepared, and a little less blindsided by what is really happening with this big shift. So let's start really simply at the very beginning. And that is that your hormones are messengers in the body. They are constantly telling your body what to do, how to use energy, what to repair and where. They're affecting your mood. They're affecting your sleep. They're affecting so much. So when hormones begin to shift, you don't just feel it in one place. You feel it across multiple systems. So it isn't just about, stress, for example, which is what we're talking about today. There are so many factors that are leading up to this, and it all has to do with the communication with multiple systems. Okay. We're going to talk about at a high level just the key hormone players that we're talking about here, and they involve your sex hormones and your stress hormones. Your sex hormones are estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, which you probably know. And when you start going through the menopausal journey, all of the sex hormones start declining. And your stress hormone, cortisol, becomes more impacted. And again, this is sort of one of the key takeaways. When one of these starts fluctuating and changing, all of these are affected. And I like to say this early on because cortisol has become kind of a buzzword in the social media. You're going to see it a lot out there, and people suggesting lowering cortisol. That cortisol is the enemy. Cortisol is not the enemy, and the goal is not to lower cortisol. The goal is to modulate cortisol. So it does become more impactful at this stage of life, and so we want to know how to modulate it and have it work for us instead of getting triggered by other factors that are happening in our life and the lowering sex hormones that are naturally declining during this phase. So, I just want to pause for a minute and just kind of say that the declining hormones that happens is what is supposed to happen. That is normal. That it's not about fixing it. It's about readapting to what's happening. Because I also hear that too, like, women feeling like they're broken. You're not broken, okay? But again, as I want to emphasize, when one of these dominoes shifts, everything shifts. Everything, absolutely, in the whole body. Okay, so what is literally changing? Our estrogen is dropping, our progesterone is dropping, and we feel a little less steady. And progesterone often drops earlier. So that is what women might notice first. So estrogen is, just in a nutshell, it's helping support and protect us from many things in the body. But in the context of this, I really want to focus on estrogen is protecting us from inflammation. It's helping to balance out the inflammation that, just happens as we live our everyday life. Our blood sugar, insulin regulation, it's helping to modulate that. And it has a huge effect on our cognitive and cardiovascular health and support. And so as estrogen naturally declines, our support for these areas is declining. And so you might see a huge shift in these areas. And progesterone, which is, the second big sex hormone that's shifting, is more of our sort of calming hormone. And it supports sound sleep, unbroken sleep, our mood, our emotional steadiness. And as I mentioned, this is often where women first see a shift. Oftentimes it's in a shift in their sleep. Something's happening there. Or you might notice that you're feeling more anxious or irritable, or, you're having trouble, you're waking up in the middle of the night and you're not sure why. So, when we say that hormones are shifting and changing, what we really mean is that the signals in your body are less consistent because it's a communication loop and there's less estrogen, there's less progesterone, so there's less signaling. And when it is coming, it's sort of not necessarily at a stable, constant phase. The buffering that we used to have because estrogen and progesterone were there is lower. And your system is more sensitive to stress because these two hormones have diminished. So that is real. That is what's happening. And that is a key to understanding what's happening. It's not that you're crazy, it's that these declining hormones have lowered our ability to buffer against these other things. So we end up being more reactive because there's less hormonal cushion in our body. There's less buffering. So estrogen and progesterone behind the scenes were helping us in ways that you may not have realized. And progesterone was especially calming to our bodies. And when stress came in, your body didn't react as strongly because estrogen was high, progesterone was high, and our body was able to react and respond, pretty smoothly. So now that buffering isn't there in the same way, what we feel can feel much stronger, more intense, and sort of harder to come back from. So it's not that your capacity to respond to stress has disappeared. It's that the buffering has changed. Okay. So I really want to emphasize that it's not that your life got harder, although you may have added stresses, right? That may be part of it that's contributing it. But just in general, it's just that your body has less cushioning. It has less automatic defenses to handle these stressors. Okay. Hopefully that's resonating a little bit with you. So then what is happening, right? So if our sex hormones are declining, we want to really focus. I want to talk a little bit about the adrenal glands. So during menopause, the adrenal glands start to play a much bigger role. They're essentially your backup system for hormone support. And depending on where you are on the cycle, depends on how big a player they are or how much more they're being called on. I am like 10 years postmenopausal, so my adrenals are really being relied upon. You might be in the beginning and just sort of feeling this effect, so it really depends on where you are. So as the ovaries produce less estrogen, the adrenals step in and begin producing precursors, so to speak, hormones like DHEA and androgens. You might have heard of those. And those can then be converted into small amounts of estrogen in the body. So they're helping fill in the gaps, just not at the same levels as before. And depending on how stressed out you are feeling will depend on how much they're able to do that. So cortisol is the primary stress hormone, and its job is to respond to stress. It's also to regulate energy and keep your system alert and functioning. And in this phase of life, its effect tends to be felt stronger, as we said, because we have less hormone buffering around it. So DHEA, if that's new for you, is also a hormone, but it's more of a repair and resilience hormone. It supports things like tissue repair, immune function, and overall recovery. And it also serves as a building block for other hormones. So when you're under chronic stress, your body tends to prioritize making cortisol. And what that means is it can leave less available bandwidth for your body to be creating DHEA for hormone support, because the adrenals Um, so as estrogen's declining, your adrenals step in to support hormones while they're also handling stress. But if they're really busy handling stress, then they're not going to be stepping in to full capacity to support your hormones. So it's sort of a catch-22 there. Okay. So additionally, when we're stressed, what your adrenals are going to do is produce cortisol first, because your body is going to prioritize survival. That's what it wants to do. So it's not, it's really never that your body is failing you. Your body is prioritizing survival. So if we're so stressed, if our stress level is so high that our adrenals are always working on, cortisol to get us, to take care of the tiger that's chasing us, so to speak, we're never really getting into that repair mode, the DHEA side of the adrenals working, and that repair function that happens a lot at night when we sleep. So sleep is a big precursor to modulating stress response in the body. So that invites us to kind of look at sort of how we're how are we walking through this stage of life. And this has to do with our lifestyle choices. Some of them that we can't do. Stress is here. Stress is part of everyday life. And it isn't really about minimizing stress. It's about maximizing our resilience, right? Building our resilience to it. And because we have less of that buffering, because our hormones are, declining as they naturally should, it's like our pool is it's not as deep as it used to be to pull from. So when we start this journey, it really is an invitation to kind of look at those lifestyle factors to see what is it that we can make an impact for that might be contributing to increased stress, right? So the old way that we might have dealt with a really maxed out calendar, overcommitments, taking care of everybody else and putting ourselves in the back burner. When we were in our 20s and 30s, we had more, we had more to pull from to be able to handle that. And, we might push through it and we might do more because we can handle everything and pretty much function fine. But this phase of life, it does ask for something different. And it asks for more awareness and more support and more honesty about what's actually working and what isn't. And so I just invite you to, at this stage in life, just, take a moment for yourself in a quiet moment and think about what is working for me and what is draining me that might possibly be draining my health. Because this is the time to be thinking about that. And you might not ever have thought about that before, and that's perfectly fine. And I do invite you to look at that for yourself and see how that is. Because this stage of life really is an invitation to reevaluate how you're spending your time, what you're saying yes to, what gives you energy, and what drains you. And I love this quote. I can't even remember where I first saw it, but when I first saw it, it made me stop in my tracks, because menopause doesn't make a woman crazy. It makes her honest. And sometimes it's for the first time in her whole life that she's reevaluated things for herself to see what is working and what is not. And so I just wanted to share that quote with you and let you know that if you're showing up now and you're feeling like things that they were fine, but now they're making you crazy, or, you used to always do things for certain people and it just rolled off your back, but now, you're having a little niggling feeling that it's just not something you want to do anymore. there's nothing wrong with reevaluating that for yourself. And in fact, it's called for. So that's an invitation. Um, and when we're looking at, you know, herbs and, I'm a registered herbalist and that is my world. I do work with herbs. We cannot look past the foundations. They have to be looked at first. And the foundations are lifestyle, which is a little bit of what I just mentioned, all of that thought about how am I living my life? How do I want to live my life? What's in my control? What's not? And what kind of small changes can I make that might really nourish um, myself as a midlife person? And nutrition, right? We have to look at our nutrition differently. Things have changed. And our nervous system, everything is connected. And if the foundation is shaky, it's hard for anything else to work well. So this is where we start before anything else. And I want to talk about nutrition for just a moment. Even though this class is not about nutrition, we have to talk about the fundamentals, because when you're going through this change in life, one of the big things that changes is your gut microbiome. And what that means is that those hormones, as I mentioned, they affect every system in your body, from your brain to your gut, and your gut affects your brain. There's a connection there. But in this phase of life, our body does need more nourishment, not less. And it needs more consistency. And it's less about dieting and more about rebuilding. And, a lot of us, when we've gotten to the stage, we're carrying more weight. We've got that meno belly that we really want to get rid of. And it's like stubborn. Again, that's another subject, but, visceral fat is different than subcutaneous fat. And what we used to do, less calories, move more, it doesn't work in this phase of life. And you've probably heard that elsewhere. And I just want to reiterate it. It is true, right? And so eating less doesn't work, but we do need more nutrients. Our nervous system is more sensitive. Our blood sugar is less stable, and our recovery is slower. So our body is doing more work with fewer reserves. And these key nutrients, vitamin C, B vitamins, and minerals, are foundational. And they're just a smattering, truthfully, of what is needed. But vitamin C is incredibly important for your adrenal glands and stress recovery. So it's key. B vitamins support energy and your nervous system. So those are key. And minerals like magnesium, potassium, sodium are critical for calming your system, for proper hydration. And when they're off, stress, the stress that you have in your life, which we all have in our life, can just feel like more. So this is about rebuilding, not restricting. It is about paying attention to quality. Again, what we used to be able to get away from, get away with in our 20s and 30s, and skipping meals and, eating on the run. And we can't get away with it anymore. It's a new playbook, right? And so I'm here to support you and encourage you to really look at that. And so I just want to mention, in a nutshell, very quickly at a very high level, what nutrition looks like at this stage in life, because we're talking about the foundations, right? And how we properly support those for less stress and better health. So if we zoom this out and keep it really simple, this is really what it boils down to. Overall, eating balanced meals of protein, fat, and fiber. Fiber as far as whole grains and vegetables. Protein helps stabilize blood sugar. It supports repair. Healthy fats support hormone production and brain function. And fiber is a huge piece that, for Americans just in general, it's overlooked. And we tend to, again, when it comes back to that weight loss thing, a lot of us, I put myself in that boat as well. We're trying to shed some weight, and we're doing low carb, but the truth is we need carbs. We need carbs for hormones. We need them, for building that microbiome, the good bacteria in our gut that shifts with this phase of our life. um, eating enough fiber, vegetables, whole grains is critical. So whether it's vegetables or fruits or legumes or you know, anything like that, it has a ripple effect on the whole body. And keeping it simple. We don't have to eat complicated meals. Even adding like small additions that are really nourishing. Minimizing processed foods because they tend to be lower in nutrients and fiber. They also contribute to blood sugar swings and inflammation. That adds more stress on our system, and we're already more sensitive. And then alcohol, this is just something to be aware of. A lot of women notice an impact with alcohol and their sleep. It increases anxiety. It can increase anxiety, or it just doesn't feel the same anymore. They have that one glass of wine and then they're wrecked for the next day. So, I'm not demonizing it. I don't demonize anything actually, unless it's a food sensitivity. But it's about noticing, and it's not about cutting it out completely, just paying attention to how your body feels. And if this is not the framework of where you are, just something to look at, because it doesn't need to be perfect. It just, we want to take small steps in that direction, because the small shifts that you make, they do add up. So that's the takeaway. Small shifts make the big difference, or can make a big difference. And there's so much out there on this topic, and maybe I'll do that in another class. But there's fasting, there's plant-based, there's all these other type things. But it boils down to this: however you're eating, we want to support our body in a way that supports hormones and supports stable blood sugar. And I'll just say, depending on where you are, fasting most likely is not something that supports that landscape. And happy to talk more about that another time. Okay, so we've talked about some, just general lifestyle, looking at our life with a clear lens, seeing how we can make some shifts there. Talked about the other big pillar, foundation, nutrition, looking at it for yourself with the lens, see where are you in that context, and how can you make some small shifts. And so now let's talk about herbs. And herbs, I know, can be incredibly supportive through this journey, whether you're at the beginning or post. And when we're talking on the subject of stress and modulating stress, the two big categories that we lean on are adaptogens and nervines. And adaptogens are a class of herbs that literally help regulate your body's stress response. It's that simple. And they have different impacts, picking which one does what. But in general, they help your body adapt to stress. And nervines support and nourish your nervous system. So you can see probably why these are so important. And they can be incredibly supportive, but they're not instant. They work over time. They help build resilience. They don't force quick change. And they also don't replace those lifestyle pieces. Okay, so I'm really clear on that. If you're running 50 miles an hour every day and your body is asking for rest, or it's asking for you to slow down just a little or reevaluate, herbs, yes, can support you. And they can only go so far in the body, because nutrition and lifestyle come first. Okay, so these support the systems, but they don't override it. So let's look at a couple of my favorites. And I picked three that you may have heard of and that are easy to get regardless of where you are in the country. So probably my very favorite herb to work with, and especially dealing with someone that might have, feel really stressed out, is Tulsi basil. You might have also heard it called holy basil. It is a really great example of an adaptogen herb. And what we already know is that adaptogen herbs help our body regulate and respond to stress. So instead of our system swinging too high or crashing too low, Tulsi can help bring things back toward the center. And from a more clinical perspective, it supports a more balanced stress response. So over time, um, it's going to support that balance. It reduces feelings of stress and overwhelm. It supports heart health and circulation, and also stabilizes blood sugar. And one thing I really love about Tulsi is it's delicious. It makes a delicious tea, and it's also not heavy. It's not sedating. It's calming, but at the same time, it's gently uplifting. So um, it's a really beautiful. It's a really beautiful herb, and like most adaptogens, it works best when it's used consistently over time because it goes deep. Right? This is not a surface herb. So Tulsi, basil, um, number one adaptogen for this context, I would say. So my number one herb for supporting our nervous system and a sense of calm is oats, Avena sativa. And they're what we call a nervine trophorestorative, which simply means that it helps rebuild and nourish a deeply depleted nervous system over time. So this is really specific and really great for anybody that feels mentally or physically exhausted, more irritable than usual. Like they just, like they're quick to go to anger or just feeling, out of sorts. Um, and they feel like their focus just isn't what it used to be, right? Um, there are a couple different forms that oats comes in. So I want to talk about the differences because depending on how it might support you, you might want to pick the right form. And there's no right form. You could do all three. So the first one is milky oats, and that's the fresh seed of the plant that is picked fresh. And it's the most specific and most supportive for the nervous system. If you're deeply depleted, then milky oats tincture, which is a form that usually it's taken in, is incredibly restorative. Oat straw is what you'll get if it's dried and you're making a tea. You can also make a tincture from it, but it's not going to be nearly as effective or restorative as that fresh milky oats. Now, the oat straw is deeply mineral rich and delicious in a tea. And then there's oatmeal. And while it's not targeted medicinally, it still absolutely counts because it's grounding, it's nourishing, and it helps stabilize blood sugar, which is huge at this stage of life. And for a lot of people, it's very comforting and a really grounding way to start the day. And I'll be really honest that I avoided oats for a while because I too was trying to figure out, I was on that bandwagon of maybe I need to cut carbs. And I missed my oatmeal, right? I realized that I missed my oatmeal. Now I know that that was not the right move. So, we don't dismiss oatmeal. And what I love about oats in general is that they're rebuilding, they're not stimulating, they're not sedating. And that's really what we're after in this phase of life. So, these herbs all support rebuilding a depleted system. And whether we're totally depleted or not, nourishing ourselves is what this is all about. So it's appropriate. Okay. And then I could not do this talk without talking about nettles. Nettles leaf in particular is one of the most nutrient-dense, nourishing herbs that we have. And it's considered a nutritive tonic, which means it's not pushing. It's generally tonifying our whole system. And it's also considered a kidney tonic. And if you are someone that struggles with increased allergies or sensitivities, it can help stabilize mast cells, which are part of your immune system that gets triggered when it comes in contact with something that elevates it. Overall, it is a deeply nourishing tonic, and that's what the takeaway is that I want you to get from nettles. And when we're talking about nourishing the adrenal glands and helping them function better, nettles is great for that and for the kidneys. It helps build energy and stamina, and just with this one herb alone, I have clients that when they're drinking it daily, they notice that uptick, not in the same energy you get like from caffeine. It's not that like, zoomy feeling. It's more of like just overall, you just feel like you have, it's like your well's been replenished. It helps support healthy blood and circulation, and it is rich in minerals. It's rich in iron, calcium, magnesium, and other trace minerals. So it is a really great foundational herb for most people, and it's a rebuilding herb. It's not a quick fix herb like all of these. So when someone's feeling run down or depleted, this is the kind of herb that helps feed the system back to its strength. It also is great to use as a tea. So consistency makes all the difference with any of these. Okay, so really, I like to keep things simple. You don't need it to be complicated to start, right? Anytime we're looking to turn around our health, yes, you can do a very complicated protocol. You can try this and that, but honestly, the reason I started right here is I wanted to keep it really simple. And even doing something like a daily tea with nettles, oat straw, and tulsi, or even just picking one of those, can be incredibly supportive. And consistency matters way more than perfection. Maybe you don't do it every day because you're busy. You had to get out of the door early. But the more you do it over time, it's going to build. So this is something that I really, really believe strongly in, that I do work with people one-on-one, and I do go deeper and work with more complex formulas and protocols. But I also meet people where they are. And when people want something simple, then that's where we start. I am big on educating people on what's happening in their body and letting you know that what's happening doesn't mean that something's wrong or broken. We need to adapt and support it in the way that it's asking for. And I do offer one-on-one support if that's something that you're interested in. But again, even just a cup of tea is so supportive, and it's really about finding the level of support that makes sense for you. So if you were to take one thing away from today, I really want you to know that you're not failing at stress, and it's not about lowering stress or managing stress better. It's about helping your body adapt to where it is now, and that it's asking for a different kind of support, less pushing, more rebuilding, and the shift is about supporting your body differently. And that the next time you feel like your fuse is short and you're about to lose it, maybe it's your adrenals just asking for a cup of tea or a nap. And honestly, sometimes it really can be that simple. So I just invite, if you're wanting to know more or go deeper, this is my website. And, you can follow me on Instagram. I don't post that often, but I try to be fairly consistent. And, I hope you learned something from this and found something that was helpful. And I appreciate your time. I'm going to go ahead and stop. the the share and come back here. And I'll go ahead and let's go ahead and look at the chat here. Okay. And again, just a reminder, if you'd like a copy of this recording, go ahead and I see some people have put their emails in here, and go ahead and bump it there and I will be sure and get it to you. Okay, so what do you suggest sourcing those herbs for tea? That's great. So thank you, Ellen. So if you have a local tea shop, or not tea shop, health food store, often I always recommend going local if that's an option for you. And a lot of health food stores and small grocers or even co-ops have bulk sections. And that was one of the main reasons I mentioned these 3 herbs, because they're quote common herbs. You'll be able to find them more easily than some of the specialty herbs. But if those are not available, I would say, I'm going to put it in the chat here, Mountain Rose herb is sort of my go-to source for bulk herbs. I typically recommend ordering in pound increments. We're talking probably $20 a pound. So, it's not too expensive, but again, because we want consistency, you don't want to just get a small bag because you're going to run out and then we're going to be busy. We're not going to get back to the store to get more. So just order enough for yourself so that you have enough to really be doing that. And if you have a local herb farm near you, so for example, up here in North Georgia, there's Stellar Root Farms, which is excellent in Raven County. If you're not on her mailing list, then you can, get on the mailing list of your local farms so that if there's growers in your area, you can find them. If you're in Atlanta, I will say that Health Unlimited has the best bulk section of herbs in the city. And second best is Seven Onda, which is they're both in town. So hopefully that's helpful. Okay. Oh yes. So what's a good source for milky oats? That is a good question, because it is only available a very specific stage in the growing season. And so it's what I would call a limited supply type herb. So when you're going to purchase milky oats, what you want to make sure is, if you're looking online, that it says fresh milky oats. And it'll say fresh. You do not want dried dried oats. And another clue is that fresh tinctures, I'm going to put this in the chat too, tend to be at what's called a 1-to-2 ratio. And again, this will be on the label. It'll say milky oats 1-to-2. It might just say 1-to-2. That's what it might say. And what that means, because for fresh herbs, you need a higher percentage of alcohol, without getting into all that. Dried ratios are typically 1-to-5. So a good source would be, honestly, those same places that I mentioned, and local growers. There are some brands. So Gaia Herbs is a brand that they're here in North Carolina. They do milky oats. And I will also say that you really do want it. I suggest it in tincture form, not capsule, because the gut has to further break down capsules, and you want it to hit your bloodstream quickly. So there is no substitute for milky oats. So I had someone ask me that as well, that if you can't find milky oats, then there are other options. dried oats in tincture is not the same, but I would do oat straw in a tea. It's still going to be really helpful. So, okay, hopefully that helped. Let's see what else we have here. I have a question. If you have any experience with increased vagal tone at night resulting in heart palpitations, will any of these herbs address that? So, my general answer is, as far as heart palpitation, so there's a lot more potentially going on there, Brandy, than just, calming the nervous system. I don't know where you are in your perimenopause journey, but I will say that all of these herbs, like if you're doing them consistently, what they will do, so if your, for example, heart palpitations are because your nervous system is, needing some calming, that your stress response, it could be because cortisol is hitting in the middle of the night, for example, instead of, starting at 6 a.m. in the morning when it should be building. So typically what's supposed to happen, for example, is cortisol starts sort of trickling into our system about 6 or 7 hours before we get out of bed. It should just be like a little trickle. And then in the morning, cortisol is at its highest because it's supposed to wake us up and get us out of bed. But what happens when it's dysregulated is that 6 hours when it's supposed to be trickling, it like comes on board, right? It's like, boom, I'm awake. And so that's kind of that might be a key that your cortisol is dysregulated. It's not that it's high, it's that it's dysregulated, right? And so a lot of women will notice they're waking up between 1 and 3 a.m., for example, like boom. A lot of women will notice they're getting heart palpitations, for example, between 1 and 3 a.m., boom. It could be, so there's a lot of underlying potentials, and that would need more exploration, Brandy. But yes, in general, I would say all three of those herbs could be a very good first step for helping those. Vagal tone, I would say not necessarily. That has to do with, like I would say that really, doing pelvic floor support, if you're not already doing that, like pelvic exercises, you can Google that if you're unfamiliar with that term. But doing pelvic floor exercises at red lights or while you're driving is a great way, and no one knows you're doing them. And honestly, that's something that most women could benefit from at this stage of life. So no, I don't think they wouldn't necessarily help with vagal tone. And I'm assuming that's what you mean. Okay. And if not, then just follow up and we can talk more. Okay. Thinking of growing milky oats as it's possible to get here. Would a glycerate be okay as well, or is the best extraction alcohol? Glycerates can be helpful, yes. In general, glycerates are not as strong, and you would not be extracting all the constituents that you want from the milky oats. So if alcohol is an option for you, some people can't do alcohol. And I don't particularly, in this stage of life, think alcohol preparations are the best for ongoing support, except with exception. And milky oats is one of those exceptions. So glycerate would be okay. And honestly, you could try it and see how supportive it is for you. But my preference would be an alcohol extraction of milky oats. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and, all right. So we are about out of time. And I really want to thank you all for joining today. I hope it was informative. For those of you that gave me your email, you'll go ahead. You will get a recording of this, and you know, if I can be of help in any other way, just get in touch. My information's on my website, and it's been a pleasure seeing you all. Take care. I'm doing these every other month virtually, and hope to see you on some of the others. Okay, take care. And I'm not technologically savvy, so I apologize for that. Okay.